Hello, everyone, and welcome. Sorry as I adjust the microphone. Today, I'm doing another part of the series that we started, Ghost Hunter Reviews. So, who is the Ghost Hunter we're going to be talking about? Well, today, we're talking about none other than the true father of paranormal investigators, the ultimate, or the gold standard, in a sense, as you will. Certainly far better and far older in terms of his work than Ed and Lorraine Warren, Hans Holzer. Hans Holzer, for those of you who do not know, was a man born on the 26th of January 1920 and died unfortunately on the 26th of April 2009. In his lifetime, he wrote many books. He was involved in the famous Amityville investigation. But unlike Ed and Lorraine Warren, though he did write some fiction books on it, he made a point of not glamorizing or hyping up what actually happened there. Hans, even to this day, hi cat. No, we're not doing kitty interruptions today. Meow. Meow. Hans, in terms of his methodology, tried to be as scientific as possible when it came to his research, especially when it came to his ghost investigations. Even though Hans did participate and work with quote unquote mediums, he tried to do the very best to ensure that either A, the mediums weren't lying or making stuff up. And the way he did this was he would actually make sure that the medium A didn't know anything about the location they were going to or doing the investigation of, and B, even when he was done with the mediumship and doing the seance with the medium, he would actually go talk to historical individuals at different historical societies in the local area, basically digging up any information he could find on the area as well as the location that he was at, to try and verify and make sure that what he was finding was actually legitimate. Hans also initiated in the idea of actually checking to make sure that there were no mundane causes for certain phenomena, like things moving, or wind, or dust. Hans himself had actually started doing paranormal investigations in the early 60s and continued to do so until he died, publishing many, many books, although many of them were definitely not as widely known or renowned as the Ed and Lorraine Warrens, but he did do a lot of work and a lot of different cases, thousands of them, matter of fact. And there are even some of his books that were actually released and published by his family in 2012 after his death. Hans Holzer lived for 86 years, and for most of which, after he moved to the United States from being an Austrian immigrant, he did quite a number of different cases. And in fact, one of the medium cases where he was doing his thing of researching and actually trying to figure out stuff was none other than the case of Oceanborn Mary. Hans was brought in by a family to investigate a supposed haunted area or location in their home. They insisted that Hans work with a very specific medium of their choosing. Hans agreed. He worked with the medium. However, her readings kind of caused him to have questions or doubts as to how skilled or whether this was actually real. And what actually cemented that was his historical research into the building that they were talking about. One of the main things, for example, that Hans noted is that supposedly this pirate, in this case, where the story was essentially this woman was born aboard a ship and the pirate spared everyone because they named her after his mother as an agreement. And supposedly this pirate continued to visit them long after that incident and showered gifts upon this Mary. Hans, however, discovered that the pirate that they were claiming to have an association with died by the time that Mary was like 2 years old. So it would be impossible for him to be constantly coming back. Not only that, but Hans' research led him to know that there was no one buried within the home, which was also one of the claims. And that the woman that they were claiming to have lived there never lived there. She lived in her other son's house. So it's actually interesting that Hans would actually go through and actually look at the historical records of not only the people involved in these places, but also local information and historical documentation and historians. Hans was a meticulous man who made very clear and very certain that if he was dealing with something that he considered to be haunted, it would only be after he had significant amount of evidence to actually prove it. Or at least in as much in terms of evidence that you can get with paranormal hunting. So, Hans is definitely a very viable person if you wanted to be a ghost hunter and you wanted to look into being into that profession. You would want to actually model yourself after Hans Holzer, not Ed and Lorraine Warren. Especially considering that later on in their careers, after they died, it come about that a large portion of what Ed and Lorraine Warren claimed to have done, they either didn't do or exaggerated, which is the exact opposite what happened to Hans, because Hans didn't exaggerate things or feel that he needed to be a big movie star. Which actually, it's funny because to mention that, because Hans was actually brought in to do commentary. I believe it was for one of the Conjuring movies, for a case he was involved in, and more specifically, I think it was the Amityville. And he literally sat there in the entire commentary going, that didn't happen, that didn't happen, that never happened. And then went on to his own little dissertation of what he thought would actually happen in the afterlife. So, definitely a delightful man when he was alive. But like I said, unfortunately, he died on April 26, 2009. Hans is definitely one of the greatest ghost hunters to ever exist and to have ever been. Whether you believe in the paranormal or not, of course, is up to you. I'm sure there'll be plenty of edgy non-believers or edgy skeptics that'll tell us all that we're a bunch of crazy loony bins. But I hope this video makes you have some fun and makes you discover some new people. And I hope you all stay safe and farewell, my friends. Stay spooky and enjoy.